Good morning. Okay, so it's I think the 26th of April, Monday, 11:30. How many tasks have you stacked up and nested today? Yeah. So yeah, day started off alright. Complete rejig of the studio to build in a kind of fruit and veg farm that I'm putting together. See if I can get anything out of gardening this year. I have failed on a couple of consecutive years now. So I'm just out in the woods. I've had a few days off. Thank you very much to everybody that's watching so far and supports this channel. It is appreciated. I'd rather have 50 people that are sort of interested in my channel than try and market to everybody and get views in the millions, I think. Although, you know, never say never. But yeah, so last couple of days I've been fiddling with 3D printers, getting the studio room a bit more reorganised and yeah, generally all sorts of stuff. Yeah, sorry about that. There's a lot of people about. I specifically picked this time, so there won't be that many people around. Yep, so in the meantime, one of the things I'm going to video today and put in the channel are the various Raspberry Pi projects I've put together over the last week, which was kind of cool because I had a lot of them. I had 6 various variants of Raspberry Pi sitting around, and a friend of mine gave me a Raspberry Pi Kano set because they didn't want to use it anymore, and yeah, for good reason. It has to be said, compared to a lot of other formats, the Raspberry Pi, it's hard to find a good use for them. They're a great idea, a terrible desktop compared to what you could get for the money. Like if you were in the market for a computer, a Raspberry Pi is not the cheapest or most powerful option. You're far better off getting a second-hand laptop. So I tried to do things that played to its strengths. So the Raspberry Pi's strengths are kind of its user base and people being rather determined to do something with them, and the low power consumption. So in order to play to the strengths, I built a Raspberry Pi Cade, which was not complicated. You just go to RetroPie, download the operating system, and then copy over game ROMs that you can find online. I built a media server, which was pretty cool. That took the longest, I would say. Yeah, and that's sharing a 256 gig USB stick across the network, so I can back actual files up and stuff like that to it, but also read media that I want in the main library anywhere in the house. That's cool. And finally a little Kodi entertainment system on a Raspberry Pi Zero. So yeah, those were the only 3 things. Like, I've got 3 Raspberry Pis left, and if you've got any ideas as to what to do with them, do let me know. Probably another more secure media server, but those were the 3 I found. So with that, run VT. So here's the first Raspberry Pi machine that I built recently. It's just the Kodi install, sorry, not Kodi, it's the Kano Raspberry Pi 3B Plus that I got given. Thank you very much, Miles. And all that's going into it is the power supply. It's using its Wi-Fi to broadcast the contents of this USB stick, which is 256 gigabytes, and it's doing an excellent job as a file server. As I'm speaking now, it's been up for a whole week. Yeah, so there we go. So literally just set up a normal Raspbian operating system, download it from the Raspberry Pi Foundation, install Samba, and then make sure that you build a configuration share for Samba in its configuration file that points at the USB stick as a shared thing. I've got it set to no security other than Wi-Fi access. So yeah, there we go. Moving on. So here's my Raspberry Pi Cade machine. Just install an edition of RetroPie and run the emulation update once you've connected it to the Wi-Fi. And yeah, and it's in a Little 3D printed case. It's a bit scrappy, but it does the job. And all I've got is a cheap £2 game controller running it. So you literally just put an SD card in the Raspberry Pi. You do need something a bit more beefy, so that's a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus. It's only got half a gig of RAM, but I think I've got 1 gig of RAM, but yeah. So yeah, and then install as many ROMs as you can find, really. So yeah, that's another one. Moving on. So here we are. This is my Kodi install on a Raspberry Pi 0W. Connected to my stereo. Can't play anything on it because of YouTube copyright infringements. And if we look over the edge, there's the Raspberry Pi Zero. Just sat there and Velcro to the back with an HDMI signal coming through a converter into this 15-inch monitor I had kicking around that fits exactly on this shelf. So yeah, another Raspberry Pi actually being useful. There you go. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that bit. That's a bit of tech for you. Not much in the way of tech. It's really just a case of downloading the appropriate operating system, installing it and running the setup. So yeah. So that's the interesting other bit today. Yeah. Otherwise, what do you do with the things? They're neat. They're just also astonishingly slow. So yeah, I like the form factor, and perhaps a Raspberry Pi 4 would be better. But the only one I would consider would be the 8 gig Raspberry Pi 4. But even then, you're tying yourself into a very limited amount of RAM in a network that really wants to use all of it up. So yeah. So that's what comments are for. If you can think of something cool to do with a Raspberry Pi 4, isn't astonishingly technical, then I'm all ears. So yeah. Outside of that, not a lot going on in the world. Apart from the fact that there is an allegation that Boris Johnson was initially supporting the European Champions League, or whatever it's called, which could be the reason that he loses popularity. And do that. This is the killer app, I would have to say, of the combination of the Zhiyun Smooth 4 and an iPhone. You can do this, just swap the cameras without changing out your rig. So yeah, the world's an interesting place. So I'm going back now to my hovel to plant a vegetable garden and play a bit more with my 3D printer today. So, as always, end greed, end poverty, end hate, or we all die. And thanks for watching, and do take care. I'll see you soon.